the unprecedented cross-cultural exchange, the Orcs and Eldar have arrived at a single, uncontrovertible agreement. Red ones go faster. The best way to express that need for speed is in today's detachment, the Windrider host. This same hand-flavored detachment is for the Eldar player who wants to live fast and die slightly slower, with a primary focus on bikers. We'd like to thank Games Workshop for providing us with a preview copy of these rules for review purposes. If your need for speed is a need to read, head on over to goonhammer.com for a written companion article. Link in the description. Detachment Rule: Ride the Wind. Asuryani mounted and Viper units may be set into reserves during deployment, and if they choose, they may arrive from strategic reserves on turn 1, treating the battle round as being one higher than it is. In addition, at the end of your opponent's turn, you may select a number of those units to be put back into strategic reserves based on the battle size, typically 2 for 2,000 point games. The affected units include Windriders, Vipers, Farseer and Warlock Skyrunners, Shroud Runners, and Shining Spears. Note that none of these include Harlequin units. This is a strong, flexible rule for a detachment which wants to rely on hit and run and focused attacks. Being able to bring units from reserves on turn 1 gives you 2 key advantages. First, it prevents your best units from being alpha struck early on, and it puts your opponent on the back foot as they must now consider defensive screens during deployment. Second, being able to rapidly redeploy your mounted units at the end of your opponent's turn allows you to reposition and readjust throughout the game, factoring in battle focus abilities, and we really start to drive some synergies for the mounted units. This is one hell of a mobile army. Unfortunately, the enhancements are decidedly low octane, and they must go on a mounted character model. First Drawn Blade lets the bearer's unit scout 9 inches. It's not bad, but you've already got plenty of movement available to you. What really wants this is a unit of Shining Spears, but with the loss of the Autarch Skyrunner, there's no way to provide it. Mirage Field provides a -1 to be hit on the bearer's unit. It's not bad, but you'll most likely be relying on movement to keep your stuff safe. Seer Sight Strike gives your model's psychic weapons anti-monster and anti-vehicle 2-up, suddenly making Eldritch Storm a pretty potent threat to targets this detachment might typically struggle against. It's definitely worth taking on a Farseer. Echoes of Ulthanesh generates a command point in your command phase on a 5-up, a 4-up if you're outside your deployment zone, and a 3-up if you're in your opponent's. It's a bit of work to get the most out of it, but it's not a bad pick. As you'd expect, the stratagems rely on Asuryani mounted or Viper keywords to work, and they still don't benefit Harlequins. Death from on High lets one of your mounted or Viper units reroll wounds for a phase on a turn where they show up. Considering how much this detachment plays with reserves, you'll get a lot of mileage out of this one. Overflight is a 7-inch move that you get after destroying a unit in the shooting or fight phase. This is the kind of squirrely elf bullshit that is guaranteed to frustrate your opponent and your humble narrator. It's nasty for objective play, or using it to slingshot your Shining Spears forward into a charge, and maybe even back afterwards. Wind of Blades is a pretty standard mobility stratagem, allowing a unit to shoot and charge after advancing or falling back. It's great on everything, but especially good on Shining Spears. Daring Riders lets one of your mounted units deep strike 6 inches away from enemy units, but they can't charge afterwards. The stratagem actually says 3 inches, but we know data slate adjustments to these types of rules apply here. It's still great for exact positioning, and even getting into your opponent's board edge on turn 1. Focused Firepower is straightforward but effective, cranking up the AP of a unit shooting by 1. You'll use this a lot, especially if you stack it with something like the Warwalker's armor reduction ability. Spiraling Evasion is a good panic button, giving one of your units a 4-up invulnerable save in the shooting phase. If you can't shoot and scoot your bikes into safety, this will have to do. Obviously, you're gonna want a load of Windriders to make this detachment work, and fortunately they're a solid unit in their own right, with loads of chip damage shooting and some uncommon Aeldari rerolls. Back them up with Warlock Skyrunners and Shroud Runners to help your units ignore cover, plus a little extra oomph from a Farseer Skyrunner with Seer Sight Strike. That Farseer's big contribution here will be limiting a clapback from the units you don't kill, with the Misfortune ability causing a -1 to wound debuff on an enemy unit. Then there's your Shining Spears, whose incredible mobility is enhanced significantly by the rules of this detachment. They become your all-purpose countercharge unit. The Viper is probably the weakest beneficiary of the detachment rules, but it does pair nicely with the Farseer Skyrunner to double down on a key enemy unit for both -1 to hit and -1 to wound. How you build your army will then depend on what abilities you want to enhance your mobile, deadly core with. Only mounted units benefit from the detachment rules, but units like Warwalkers, Fire Dragons, Night Spinners, Fire Prisms, Lycus, and more have unit abilities or just general capabilities that will pair nicely with your mounted core, rounding out your army's ability to deal with any threat. Now let's cover the strengths and weaknesses. strong synergy with battle focus, and the excellent supporting stratagems. Turn 1 arrival from Strategic Reserves capability. Up and down Strategic Reserves play. Now unfortunately, it's a narrow set of units and unit capabilities that benefit from the detachment rules. By its nature, it's also going to be a low model count army combined with low durability. And to get the most out of this detachment, you're going to need a lot of command points. Playing this detachment will take some forethought and planning to execute, and you'll need to be very patient in determining when you want to launch your units into the enemy, but it'll be devastating once you do. Of all the detachments in the Codex, we may find that this detachment results in the greatest performance gap in competitive results based on player skill. This isn't an Eldar easy mode detachment by any stretch, and mastering it will require planning, movement, and positioning skills worthy of an Autarch. We think it'll be hugely rewarding to the players who do, and absolutely confounding to whoever is standing on the other side of the table. If that wasn't enough hog cranking for you, head on over to goonhammer.com to learn more about this detachment and find out just how many flying motorcycles we can cram into a single list. You can also support us on Patreon if what we do gets your engine revving. I've been Easy Rider McBad to the Bone, reminding you that the Viper jet bike model is older than Warhammer's target demographic. Thanks for watching.